Hello, everybody. Welcome into The Cycle. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined today, as always, by Mike Mayer. Mayer, how are you doing, buddy? We are a couple weeks into the season now.
I'm good. I have a lot of hitters not doing so hot, so I could be doing better on that front. I think in one league that we're in together, I have an offense that's about as bad as it can be. I check it daily, and at one point I had like 13 points, and there's 10 categories, which means I'm near the bottom in a lot of those categories. My pitching is doing great, hitting not so great, but that seems to be the case for a lot of people in the early going right now.
We are facing each other in another one of those leagues in the head-to-head points deep keeper league that we are in, and I will, out of respect to you, not share the current score in that head-to-head matchup. You were complimenting my Ovechkin sweater before we started recording. I rocked it on the Dynasty podcast earlier this week too, just giving love to my guy, the only player that has ever made me care about hockey. Hockey is not anywhere near the top of my list of sports I prioritize as a fan, but I am from the DC area, so the Caps are my team and have been, and I have memories in middle school of watching like Ovi score the goal against the Coyotes where he was like on his back and kind of on his side and like somehow still scored. Like I was sitting in middle school watching that highlight, and now here I am in my 30s and he's still dropping 40 goal seasons. So super fun to see him get the record, and I had to represent him on the show this week. We always not always, but we have had some episodes of the show where people weigh in on our sartorial choices of our outfits, so hopefully the Ovi sweater gets a positive grade from the fans.
I weighed in on my own last week because I watched the show back like I always do, and realized I was wearing a brown shirt in front of a brown bookcase, and I was like, well, probably shouldn't do that again. It's kind of like wearing a green shirt in front of a green screen.
It's better than wearing a green shirt, because we could, in editing, turn that into something if we chose to, if you were wearing green. So probably better to wear brown in that case. Let's jump in. We're gonna be talking our usual stuff here, rounding the bases. We're gonna get into some waiver pickups and some buy lows and sell highs and all that good stuff. That's all together on the audio side. The show is split up on the video side. So if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to check out all the episodes as they drop kind of throughout the next couple of days. We kind of spread out the content throughout the weekend, so we have something every day for everybody. This will be kind of the first large section of the show on the video side, and then we'll jump into the other kind of shorter versions of the rest of the show. On that side, again, on the audio side, if you want it all kind of in one place, that is what this episode will be. We will start with rounding the bases, as always, Mayer, and kind of like right off the bat, I just wrote down like so many injuries because there are a lot of them going on here in the start of the season, and even just particularly in this last week since our last episode, there have been a lot of them. Jackson Merrill on IL, Justin Steele, friend of FantasyPros, on the IL after a strong start. Wyatt Langford has 4 home runs, but now he has the oblique injury. Zach Eflin was pitching very well in Arizona, came out of the game with shoulder soreness. Apparently the MRI was somewhat positive, but he still is going on IL anyway. Spencer Arrighetti, obviously, like you kind of wrote here in the notes, freak accident, that warm-ups just kind of breaking the thumb on a line drive. Blake Snell, Victor Robles, who was somebody that you and I both really liked in draft season, now has his wrist issue. Ketel Marte, series of weeks is what you wrote down here. Kind of getting that update of how long he's going to be out. Pablo Lopez on the IL. So a lot of different names. Who kind of stands out most to you among that group? Obviously, Marte and Merrill are probably like the best, pure fantasy players in that group. But does anybody stand out just in terms of what we've seen in the early going, or thoughts on the injuries from that group?
Yeah, the Jackson Merrill one, it seems like hamstrings are always like terrifying, but it seems like it might not be that long of a stay because he just kind of like missed a couple of days and they kind of weren't sure if he was going to go on the aisle or not, and then they just decided to play it safe. So hopefully for him it's a minimum stay and he'll be right back. The Ketel Marte one, it's like, the update we got was like he's going to be out for a series of weeks. Like that's not a good update because that means he's out for like 3 weeks minimum plus a rehab assignment. Like you're going to be out without Ketel Marte for like a month at least. And then Victor Robles, like not the biggest name, but someone you and I, like you said, were grabbing a lot in draft season. And he's going to be out a really long time, to the point where he's like, if you don't have a decent amount of IL spots in your league, like he's going to have to be a drop, like, because you're going to be out without him. I can't say that out with him for months, like potentially 3 or 4 months. So brutal blow to not like the most like premier name, but a really long-term injury for someone we were hoping to get solid batting average and a bunch of steals from. And like we're going to talk about throughout, this video and the show, hitting is kind of barren out there. A lot of what we would think as like elite great hitters are off to slow starts. And if you start looking at the free agent and the waiver wire, there's not a lot out there. I need hitting in a bunch of leagues, and I'm looking at the wire and it's just barren. And there's like really deep names. I'm just like, and we'll talk about one of them on a really hot start soon. But yeah, there's not a lot out there. So the hitters in particular are tough to be without for a while. And the Wyatt Langford one, they don't seem like that concerned, but it's an oblique, and obliques are always tricky. Like, who knows how long he's going to be out, so that's not great either.
I think I said wrist when I was reading through all those for Robles. It was the shoulder that was fractured. Just to clarify on that one, because you would think like a wrist. Oh, that's not that. You wouldn't think months for that. It's the shoulder, which you and I can weigh in on. Not that we fractured our shoulders, but we know what that's like for sure. Recovering from that. Yeah, I mean, it's like, does this feel like more injuries to you for the first couple weeks of the season than other years? It felt like that a little to me. I don't know that the data backs that up. I do feel like the early season, it always feels like kind of the injuries all come at once, but it just felt like, I was looking at like the MLB headlines on ESPN, and like every other headline was this other player is headed to IL. It just seemed to really become kind of the dominant story of this week. Did you feel that way from like a macro level perspective?
It felt like more hitters than in recent years, because I feel like in previous years it's like pitcher, 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 pitcher. They're just like down, and we're like, well, there goes all the pitching depth we thought we had. This year it feels like more hitters are just like dropping in the first 2 weeks of the season. It's a long list.
And there's, of course, the people who have been coming back. Like Gunnar missed the first week of the season. He's now back. You have here in the notes like Tatis and Freeman coming back. Maybe by the time you're even listening to this episode, they're already back. Ranger Suarez, rehab assignment starting as of the day that we're recording this. So not just the guys who are getting hurt now, but who were hurt already kind of at the end of spring, even earlier in the season, and who are maybe now working their way back. But just like a lot of them going on. And in a scenario where it's already kind of behind the eight ball for a lot of teams on the hitting side of things. So
Speaking of, we didn't write him down in the sheet, but one name who should be coming back as early as next week is Spencer Strider, because he just pitched. He should have thrown about 90 pitches today in his rehab start. I think he just finished that rehab start. He
did. So I don't know if you had seen the actual stat line. Have you seen the stat line from that start?
No, is it bad?
I have it up. No, it's amazing. He threw 90 pitches. He got 25 whiffs, 5 1/3 innings pitched, which is 16 outs recorded, 13 strikeouts.
Amazing.
Now he's facing minor league hitters, of course, but there was 1 earned run, 3 hits, 2 walks. But I believe he faced a total of 21 batters and struck out 13 of them. So
I was actually bummed because where I live in Georgia, I'm about an hour. I'm like 30 minutes from the Braves Park. I'm like an hour from AAA Gwinnett, where he was doing his rehab start, and then like I'm an hour in the other direction from their Rome single A team. So I was hoping to catch like a rehab start from him, but they're on the AAA Gwinnett was on the road this week. So I was like, oh man, I could have gone to that game, but they're on the road.
Yeah, could have seen an awesome start. I want to let everybody know that if you want a chance to win a signed Nico Horner Cubs jersey for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you have to do is subscribe to the FantasyPros MLB YouTube channel right now, drop a comment below on any video, and that's it. We will be announcing a winner right here on the podcast, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. Some other kind of news and notes as we round the bases here. We have to talk about Kyren Paris. I was staring at him a few days ago in one of our shared leagues to pick him up, and I had like set up the edition, and I could not decide which one of my players I was going to drop for him, so I ended up not making the pickup. Obviously regretting that immensely now. I was a believer in him as a worthy addition, but that's sometimes, especially early in the season, that's sometimes the trickiest part of fantasy, isn't knowing who to add, it's knowing who to drop, and I was unable to make that decision, and so far, I mean, we'll see how much this lasts, but so far it's certainly costing me with him. What a tremendous start. I like, you can kind of run through some of the stats if you want. He's been fantastic. 4 stolen bases, 5 home runs, a 440 batting average. He's 25 at-bats, 11 hits in those at-bats, 11 runs scored already. His OPS is over 1,600. There's a lot of small sample size with some of those ratio stats, but even the counting stats have been wildly impressive. And this is for a guy who's 23 years old, does not have a ton of experience, coming out of nowhere.
1,000,000% coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, I said kind of, and then I was like, no, he's coming out of nowhere. There was a great graphic that I saw Cespedes Family Barbecue reposted. Highest OPS through first 10 games of a season for anybody age 23 or younger. This is all time. Number 1 on the list is Jimmy Fox in 1928. Number 3 on the list is Babe Ruth in 1918. Number 2 on the list, Kyren Paris in 2025. Remarkable.
Is Kyren Paris the best hitter in baseball? Yeah, it's like you said, it's coming out of nowhere. His it's not like he just had an unimpressive like minor league career. He stunk in the minor leagues, like stunk out loud. And to the point where it's almost like, how is he even on the roster? Like he in the minors last year, he batted 167. He's always had speed. He's always had hit tool problems. There's a story going around, I believe it's in The Athletic, all about how he revamped his swing this offseason. He worked with Aaron Judge's personal hitting coach to kind of completely overhaul his swing, like tap into more power. And lo and behold, so far it's working. And it's just one of those things where it's like, do we think he's a completely different player now? He's gonna break out and just be this power hitter? Probably not. Like, I don't think there's any chance that he maintains this kind of pace. But also, like we were just talking about, a lot of fantasy managers need hitting right now, and he's someone who's hitting right now. And so, sure, go ahead and add him. In daily leagues, or leagues that managers needed hitting last week, he may have been already picked up. But in a lot of leagues, he's still out there. In like weekly leagues where he had like a couple big games ahead of like the last waiver period, like he may not have been added. But he's going to be added this weekend, and it's going to be wild, especially in some of these bigger leagues, like what the fab looks like. I know I have a couple bids already out for him, and I'm probably not going to get him because I'm not going to go crazy, but I do want him. Even if this just only lasts for like 2 more weeks, I could really use those 2 weeks. And so it's like, do I think he's this, Aaron Judge power hitter now? No, but maybe he's, revamped his swing to the point where he's a different player, where he can be really hot for 2 more weeks and then maybe serviceable for a few more weeks or a couple more months. Like maybe he'll at least like hit for a decent enough average, and we know he has speed. He's going to steal bases if he's in the lineup. So maybe he'll, like, is he going to hit 440? No. Is he going to hit 240? Maybe. Is he going to hit 210? Maybe. But if he can hit like 250 and hit 5, 6, 7, 8 more home runs, he's probably going to steal 30 bases. Like, there's a lot of value in that. And so it's hard. Like, no one really knows, is this real or not? Like, there's no way it's this real. But is it real enough for him to just be usable in fantasy? And for the short term, yes. For the long term, no one really knows.
Corbin Young, who I think used to maybe write for FantasyPros at one point. I don't know if he ever did or not. I don't want to say that he did and he didn't, but I thought he might have at one point. At any rate, he's a fantasy baseball writer who I enjoy, and he had some tweets earlier today just kind of about how Paris's pulled bat speed has gained a lot. He had 2.5 miles per hour. And the gained pulled average exit velocity has kind of been aligned with that. Kind of speaking to your point about like the swing changes. I think it's worth noting too, and I forget who said this. I saw somebody point this out. Like, he was drafted as a 17-year-old a year before COVID like really messed with everybody's development. And at that age and lack of professional experience, I would imagine he was maybe more susceptible to being hurt by that missed time than maybe some other profiles of players. So I'm open to the idea that this is legitimate to a degree. I guess what I would ask you is, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you had to assign a numerical value to it, how legitimate would you say this is? Because obviously nobody's thinking that this is now the number 1 overall pick in 2026 drafts. I mean, this could be like a Chris Shelton, and it's like, oh, what a fun April, and we just look back and remember it fondly years from now, like, oh, remember the Kyren Paris, April we had. But at the same time, I think there's, like I said, a degree of legitimacy to it. So where on that scale are you?
like a 3, like a 3 of being real. I will say, I was kind of like crapping on his minor league numbers. His 2023, granted it was Double A, but in 113 games, he had 14 home runs and he stole 44 bases while batting .255 with a 17.1% walk rate. So that's not terrible. It's not like, normally like in the minor leagues coming up, you want to see someone hitting higher than 250 because if you can only hit 250 in Double A, what are you going to do in Triple A in the majors? Probably not hit 250. You probably hit significantly lower than that. But it was 2 years ago. Last year, weird year for him. He kind of bounced all over the place. But like, can he hit 240? Hit a dozen home runs and steal 40 bases? Maybe. And like, there's value in that. It's just like, it's hard to say. This really came out of nowhere and he's been this good. Like I sent you earlier today the FantasyPros VBR and it's Aaron Judge, Kyle Tucker, and Kyren Paris.
Yeah. He's been awesome. I hope it continues because it's certainly fun to watch. Let's look at some early pitching standouts. We're kind of asking the question, real or not real. You added most of the names to the list. I threw on a couple at the end. I'll do the names that I added on here at the end first, just because I only had a couple of them, and then we'll get into the ones that you added. I threw Casey Mize and Max Meyer in there. We're actually going to be talking about both of them a little bit later in the show, so we can kind of go quickly on them. In general, I do subscribe to the idea that this is real. Again, to a degree, I'm not saying that these are superstar fantasy aces or anything, but we talked last week about how much I like Casey Mize as an early pickup and somebody that I'm just very on board with the idea of. There's clearly pedigree here. He's only 27 years old. Like, I'm just a big believer in these guys. Like, when they show you they're taking a step, believe it. And he's obviously been very good through a couple of starts here. Particularly encouraging to see coming off that first start, which was really nice, that he was then able to do it against the Yankees, who have started off so hot, and to have a really great game there. I thought was much more encouraging than seeing him like against the Mariners. He went 5 2/3, 1 hit, 3 walks, and 6 strikeouts. Okay, that's great. It is the Mariners lineup. To do it against the Yankees, and I know it was in Detroit, but to do it against the Yankees and go 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts again, I thought was really encouraging. So we talked a bit last week about maybe some of the pitch usage stuff for him, and the sweeper had been talked about. It looked like, according to StatCast, the knuckle curve went up a lot in this last outing. So that's still really early to kind of see how that pitch usage normalizes. But again, my approach has always been, when a guy with this kind of pedigree shows you that they're taking a step forward, I want to believe it. And it's kind of along the similar lines with Max Meyer. He's somebody that I forget who it was. Somebody on our MLB Fantasy Fest stream this year was talking him up. Maybe you remember who it was that was talking to which analyst, but like, he was kind of a favorite sleeper of a bunch of different people, honestly. And again, a guy with draft pedigree, who has this real opportunity to take a step forward. He's younger than Mize, but again, two guys who I just have been really impressed with what I've seen so far, and I am buying into it for as long as I don't have a reason to think otherwise.
Yeah, like you said, it's the pedigree's there. He's really interesting. It looks like StatCast has actually reclassified that knuckle curve, and they're calling it a slurve now.
I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong thing. I meant to say slurve. You're right. Thank you for correcting that.
Yeah, to the point where like last year they don't even have the knuckle curve for this year, but last year it looked like he threw like a slurve like a little bit and a knuckle curve like 7% of the time, and now they're saying his slurve is his second most used pitch after his four-seamer, throwing it over 25% of the time. And right now opponents are only batting .222 against it with a .111 expected batting average. So that's always interesting when you see kind of like, very early on, kind of like a reason for, some breakout potential.
Before we move on to Meyer, I just want to also ask on Mize. So when you look at some of the StatCast stuff, the real difference besides the slurve, which again, thank you for correcting me, is the four-seam fastball has just been a lot more effective. He's not throwing it, it was 38% of the time last year, 35% of the time so far this year. But last year, opponents were batting .300 off his four-seamer. This year, it's .077. Like, the spin rate is actually a little lower this year so far. And again, it's really early.
Velocity's down too.
Yeah, velocity is a little bit down, but the put away percentage is doubled. The whiff rate is much higher. The extension is even lower, but it's been way more effective of a pitch for him. Again, in the very early going, do you kind of ascribe any like? Do you think that that's relevant this early, or is that, do you think, just a fluke and it's probably a combination of a bunch of different things?
It's probably a combination. It seemed like, I don't know, maybe he got a little bit of bad luck last year. I'd be curious if the decrease in velocity is somewhat intentional for either location or to kind of tunnel it better with his secondary pitches. Kind of impossible to know that this early on without talking to him. But it could just be that it's playing. The four-seamer slurve combination is just playing better together, and then splitting throwing the split finger in there, which has been really effective.
Yeah.
So it could just be because interestingly enough, he's throwing his split finger harder. So it could just be maybe he's just taking a little bit off the fastball, throwing the split a little bit harder, and so there's not as much of a difference between those pitches anymore. To kind of keep hitters more off balance. Really small sample size, but off to a really good start. But again, this is a former first overall pick who we knew kind of had this in him. We've seen the potential before. He just hasn't put it all together. And so we'll see. Early returns are very good.
Any quick thoughts on Meyer before we get to the list of your names here?
Another player, high pedigree player we've been excited about for a while. Like he's, I think we talked about it in a recent episode, somewhat recent episode of the cycle, where he was one of those guys who was drafted and they were talking about him pitching that year. Like he was that good. In the majors. So yeah, really, really exciting start for him. I always wonder if is his future destined for the bullpen with how hard he throws. But I'd love for him to stick in the rotation and stay healthy. But it's a very small sample size, and it's also a small sample size for his career because he hasn't been healthy. But stuff looks pretty good so far. Underlying numbers so far look pretty good.
He is giving up loud contact. The exit velocity is 93.5 miles per hour that he's allowing, which is up over last year. But a lot of the other data looks pretty good.
Yeah. But he's, I don't want to keep repeating it, but, high pedigree, electric arm.
There's a reason I kind of put the two of them together in terms of that pedigree, maybe putting it all together this year. They're like I said, Meyer's younger, but similar ages. So.
Yeah. Slightly, not as drastic as Mize, but slightly adjusted pitch mix. He's throwing his four-seamer less and his slider and sinker more, and just kind of adjusting that pitch mix. And, sometimes it only takes a slight change like that to, because he's always leaned on his slider, but now he's about the same.
Last year's slider was about 40.6% and four-seamer was 39.6%. So combined, that's over 80% are those two pitches. This year, it is a little more spread out. The slider is still 37%, four-seamer's 24%, changeup 14%, sinker 13%, sweeper 10%. So just more options to work with is naturally going to kind of improve some of those how they all perform, you would think.
Yeah, more sweeper is generally going to mean less of a slider because they're somewhat similar.
All right, run us through some of the names that you threw out here for real or not real.
So one of the real or not real I had to include is Robert Suarez, the best closer in baseball. Just we like to anoint people the best in baseball because he was someone we were very concerned about coming into the year. And lo and behold, he's 6 for 6 in save opportunities with a 0.0 ERA and looks fine despite all the concerns coming into the year. I'll pose it back to you. Do you think this is legit? Do you think he's just kind of figured it out and we were worried about nothing? Or do you think it's just too early, too small of a sample size and that, there's going to be trouble ahead?
Yes to both of those. Not that I think there's going to be trouble ahead, but it's too, especially for a closer, it's too early to get too far over our skis, but I am not that concerned I don't think he's going to have a 0 ERA going forward, but I would be very confident with him as my closer because I think the Padres are obviously going to win a lot of games. They're a good team. I like that we've seen the strong start from him that you would think just from a psychological perspective kind of help solidify the role in the eyes of decision makers in San Diego. And I think he's a talented pitcher. So yeah, I would definitely lean on the side of real for him.
Yeah, and he's leaned more on fastball changeup than mixing in the sinker less than he had in the past. Not a lot less, but he's throwing his changeup a lot more, which is interesting mix-up for him. because he was last year threw his changeup like 12% of the time. Now it's over 32% of the time. So he's really mixing in the changeup, and so far so good. Because I guess if you're going to be a 2-pitch pitcher, 4-seam or sinker probably aren't the two you want to,
Well, the four seamer he's only thrown 48% of the time. Last year was 70%. So that's where the changeup usage has eaten into, is the 4-seamer.
Yeah. And if you can figure out a good changeup, smart. And so far, no one's hitting it. So good for him.
Yeah. Who else you got?
Nick Lodolo is another player, a pitcher off to a strong start, but there is some, I'll just run through. I'll throw out a bunch of names since we're going here. Nick Lodolo, Chris Bubic, Tyler Mahle, Easton Lucas, and those are the ones. So Lodolo, Bubic, Mahle, and Lucas. I'll throw it back to you. Do you are you excited about any of these 4 pitchers? Because they're all kind of off to like strong starts, like top 25 EBR starts. Some have higher pedigree than others. Lodolo has looked really good, but there are some concerning kind of underlying numbers there. Like he's kind of like pitching to contact, which is not really what we're, not really what he's known for. Bubic has always been kind of like the analytics darlings. People have always liked him. It's just kind of been inconsistent. Easton Lucas, not a name I've heard a lot about until this year. And Tyler Mahle is another guy that the analytics darlings have always liked. I've always liked Tyler Mahle, but he's always had like injury concerns. But all 4 are off to pretty strong starts.
It's an interesting question because the guy, I really liked Lodolo at cost in drafts this year. He was one of my favorite later targets. So part of me just wants to say like, oh, this is confirmation that I was right. I'm really happy with the strong start. ERA under 1 through 3 starts, 18 and 2/3 innings, whip under 1. But then at the same time, like the strikeout rate is actually like drastically down compared to what it was, like alarmingly low. I believe it's
unsustainably low. I would say.
Yeah, just 11.3% strikeout rate. The last 3 years for him were 29, 28, and 24%. So obviously that's like super low. The walk rate is also quite low, which is lower than has been in recent years. So that is good, but. Like a whiff rate 15th percentile, strikeout rate 10th percentile. I know it's early, but those are like really concerning. So it's difficult for me to answer on Lodolo because I liked him coming into the year. And like on the one hand, great. Well, if you started him, unless you really needed those strikeouts, you've been really happy with everything else he's given you. But it's hard to look at what he's done so far and say, yes, this is the real breakout that I'm buying into long term. Bubic is interesting because I watched that Orioles game very closely, obviously, and he was just like totally like they could not do anything with him. Now, Brandon Hyde, I have a lot of problems with as the Orioles manager, and he is like a complete just like he worships at the feet of righties versus lefties. And does not believe in reverse splits. So that whole series was really frustrating in that regard. And I had a lot of problems with the lineup that he threw out against Bubic. But setting that aside, he obviously did look good. Like you mentioned, kind of like historically an analytics darling. Mahle is somebody that I have always liked. So it's fun to see like having a strong start as well. And like truth, like I was aware of who Easton Lucas was, but I'm not going to say that I have like a long history of paying that close attention to him. So it's harder for me to be like, oh, this is like a flash in the pan or whatever, because I don't have as long of a runway with how closely I've paid attention to him in the past. But yeah, Lodolo is the one that, like I said, that I liked most coming into the year. So in that perspective, I would love to say this is confirmation of my priors, but on the other hand, I can recognize what the data is saying.
I will say of all the 4 of them, like there are different things to be concerned about. We talked about Lodolo. The one for Tyler Mahle is if you look at like his stuff plus numbers, there's some red flags there. Like it's pretty low. All of his pitches are pretty much below average, except for his cutter, which is like just above average. But his splitter is like about as bad as it can be in terms of stuff plus. His fastball is like fine, like just under average. Slider is like pretty poor. So there are some concerns there, even though I have generally liked him historically. It's just
I can't believe he's only 30. I feel like I've been thinking about Tyler Mahle for a lot longer than that.
Yeah, I always dream of that 2021 season when he struck out over 200 guys with a sub-4 ERA, and I was like, we finally made it. It's finally Tyler Mahle season, and he basically hasn't pitched much. Or no, he did pitch in 2022, but he's missed most of the last 2 seasons.
Let's get to our early victory laps and L's. Obviously, we're calling these way too early for a reason, but just kind of early on, guys that we liked, that we are feeling good about, and kind of proud of those early picks, and guys that we're also recognizing maybe we're not so smart by us. Let's start with the victory laps. We'll keep it positive here to kick things off. Who is your early season, way too early victory lap?
Mine is Jesus Luzardo, someone we talked about last week, who he was just, again, really early, but, I might have to take this early victory lap because he's someone with an injury history, so I might have to take this victory lap while I can. But he's someone who was going, as I talked about during draft season, he was going way too late in drafts, and he's another guy who I was like, this guy has been really good before, and I feel like we're just kind of forgetting about him, and he's, in my opinion, going like 80 spots later than he should be. And so far, off to a really good start. 12 innings, 19 strikeouts, 1.50 ERA, and looks really sharp out there. So early victory lap for me would be on the pitching side, or Jesus Luzardo.
I think it's probably telling that we both went for pitchers on the victory lap side and both went for hitters on the L's side. That seems reflective of fantasy baseball these first few weeks. I went with Hunter Greene. I told you I thought it was like downright disrespectful that his ADP was in the 90s. Later into draft season, coming off the season he had last year, an ERA under 3. He made 26 starts. I know, like, you think about him as like an injury risk guy. He threw 150 innings pitched. That's not far off the most in baseball, like in modern baseball. So, I was not really concerned about the usage in terms of that side of things for him. WHIP was 102, and it's been even better this year. A lot of the metrics on his stuff are superb and really always have been. I know in spring training they were like top of the charts. Through 3 starts, he's got an ERA of 131. In 20 2/3 innings pitched, he's got 23 strikeouts, a WHIP of 0.63, and somebody that, like, it's not even that he's like changed things up that much. He is throwing his fastball a little bit more, 55% up to 62% of the time, but it's largely just a lot of the same. He's just, I thought, was good last year and should have been going as a top 75 pick easily. Like, maybe even higher than that would have been where I would have like been ranking him. And the fact that he was almost outside the top 100, I thought was really crazy throughout draft season. And I am very happy that I invested in him like pretty much everywhere I possibly could. And he's still also only 25. Like, it feels like he's been around forever because he was drafted young and has been a top prospect for a while. Has been up for a few years, but like, dude's only 25 years old. It would not shock me for him to take another step forward. So I'm feeling very good about Hunter Greene. Yeah,
his underlying numbers, back up everything that he's doing, and we talk about Stuff Plus. His are like breaking the charts. They're like red to the point that they're bursting the thermostat. Just looks really, really good. Like, looks like the best pitcher in baseball right now.
The one thing I will point out for him is his ground ball rate is really low, and that concerns me.
It's not a problem in that ballpark.
I was going to say, with the home ballpark, possibly a concern there. But beyond, that's like basically the only red flag. Like, the rest is, I'm like really excited about Hunter Greene, and again, I think he's going to end up being one of my league winners of the season. If I do in fact win any leagues, will be for getting him where I got him. Let's go to the L's, though, because we, of course, made a lot of bad decisions and gave bad advice as well, like is natural for everybody to do. I'll go first on this one. Matt Shaw, who I love as a former Terp, but also I just thought was an excellent value in drafts and a late round sleeper that I was all over. Positional versatility, depending on the league you're playing in and the site you're using. I thought he was going to steal bases and hit for a decent average and just provide you assistance in a lot of areas. And he has been words that I can't say on this show. I mean, he's been very, very bad. It is early, so maybe this won't look like an L later on in the year. And I say that for him, not trying to justify it, but similar to the guy you picked, these younger players, not a lot of experience, like a prospect kind of breaking into the league. We saw last year, we talked about this in our Key Questions episode. We saw last year that the gap between pitching at the major league level and the minor league level like has basically never been wider. So I want to give a degree of like leniency to hitters who are making that adjustment for the first time. But having said that, like, I thought he would be a fantasy asset right off the bat, and he very much has not been. A 170 average, 1 home run, no stolen bases. His OPS is 571, and it's a lot of blue on the StatCast page. So his sprint speed is still fast. I do think the steals will come when he starts getting on base more, but that the other categories I'm not feeling confident in.
He is walking a lot, 17.5% walk rate, so he's at least doing that. I thought there would be some bumps in the road with Matt Shaw, like up and down. He was someone I liked. Really, Kelly early in draft season put him on my radar because she's a Cubs fan and she was all over him like really, really early as a sleeper, and then his ADP started to rise, so she kind of put him on my radar really early. I didn't think it would be this bad, but yeah, it's not off to a great start. But you would think if he's getting on base that much, he would steal a little bit more, but so far not so much.
I mean, getting on base that much, it's still his OBP is 316, so. The walks are doing a lot of the heavy lifting on his on base percentage.
10 walks in 14 games.
Yeah. That is good, right? Like I don't want to downplay that, but the rest has been pretty bad. Who's your L?
So very similar story as you kind of alluded to. My L is Cam Smith. I was really excited about him. I bought into the prospect hype. We talked about not really paying attention to spring training numbers, but there was a lot of buzz about him. It wasn't even just numbers. It was they were the Astros kind of clubhouse was like oozing about him, and just like they could not stop talking about how impressive he was, how he already looks like a major leaguer, and I was just like buying in. I know Welsh really liked Cam Smith, and similar story without as many walks as Matt Shaw, but I will say one of the reasons I picked this as my early L is not just that I was high on him coming into the year, but in a very expensive league, I made a very bad early trade. What looks like, it could work out fine, but right before the season started in this, expensive league where I would like to win a lot of money because I spent a lot of money to be in it, I traded Christian Campbell straight up for Cam Smith to acquire Cam Smith. And because I was worried about, is Campbell going to make the roster? There's a lot of talk about David Hamilton stealing at bats or maybe even stealing his roster spot. Christian Campbell struggled at the start of spring. Cam Smith is looking good. Third base is really shallow, and I was like, all right, this could be a good move. So I made the trade, and it does not look good right now because Christian Campbell looks really good, and Cam Smith does not.
We'll wrap up there for the YouTube audience. Be sure to check out the other videos we've got coming out all weekend to get you ready for the week ahead in fantasy baseball. Plus, making any waiver pickups, buy lows, sell highs, 2-star pitchers, everything else we've got going on. For Mayer, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.